Architects are artists who tell space how to behave. We are taught from day one to respect the ground. We spend our lives fighting stress and begging gravity to let our work stand. Dahlia and I instead spent the last decade figuring out how to insult all of that. Because for thousands of years, humanity had been unaware that they were only building on the surface of the universe. The mountain wind bit through my coat with the scent of electric fumes and pine trees. I stood at the edge of the concrete platform, behind a blast-resistant glass shield. The clearing around us was a crater we had ripped out of the forest, made of dirt and gravel, hidden between the Alps. General Hansen's squad had butchered over 40 acres of ancient pine to clear the perimeter. Dahlia stood beside me, her fingers tapping on her tablet. It glowed across her face and highlighted the exhaustion under her eyes. She hadn't slept in almost 48 hours, and neither had I. We didn't need coffee. Adrenaline running through our veins made even the cold wind irrelevant. I couldn't take my eyes off our life's work, what we had sacrificed our 30s for. Swimming through the pre-dawn mist on the concrete foundation was our monument to insanity. 8 individual cubes, each measuring 40 feet across, made from high-density polymers, tungsten, and steel. 4 of them were stacked vertically into a tower. The remaining 4 extended outwards from the 3rd floor, branching in all 4 directions, like a cross, or what it actually was, an unwrapped tesseract. The structure offended the natural landscape of the mountain. All around it was my wife Dahlia's contribution to my genius. The GFA gravitational folder array, a ring of 12 superconducting pillars, black towers connected by cables filled with liquid helium to prevent overheating. And all those armed soldiers surrounding the structure were completely unaware that their rifles would be useless against mathematics. They kept shifting their weights in the cold. Pressure across the primary nodes is stabilizing. Generators are at maximum capacity, Dahlia said, with that melody in her voice, like every time the numbers finally made sense. She tucked a lock of her dark hair behind her ear. She went on. We need the structural integrity to hold Johann. The GFA is going to peak at almost 400 G inside the ring. If it buckles under the pressure, we're going to create a localized micro-black hole instead of folding the building. My work is fine, Dahlia, I said. I made sure to over-engineer the load by a factor of 5. I couldn't help but grin as I traced the lines of the building against the rising sun. We're about to force the universe to accept our new reality. A Nobel Prize awaits you and the Pritzker for me, I chuckled. They'll have to invent new categories of awards after this. The gravel behind us crunched under heavy boots approaching. General Hansen stepped into the light, flanked by 2 soldiers and their rifles. He wore a parka over his uniform, exhaling clouds with each breath. From the look on his bearded face, I could tell he considered joy to be a tactical disadvantage. I couldn't remember ever seeing him smile. "Aren't you planning your award ceremonies too early, Dr. Johann?" he said, with that thick German accent. "We've been freezing here for weeks, and now I'm looking at 8 very expensive plastic boxes. Tell me you're not going to actually crush them. Explain to me again what we're buying, before I choose to freeze the money instead of my men." I turned, ready to fend off his skepticism. To think that Dahlia and I were the only people in the world who understood the punchline to the greatest joke ever told to science. "Imagine you take a cardboard box and put it in a hydraulic press," I said, gesturing at the structure. "What happens?" "You flatten the box," the general said. "Indeed, it doesn't disappear. All the material is still there, just folded into a lower dimension. It becomes a square, from a 3D object to a 2D. I understand how a trash compactor works, Doctor, and I don't like the thought of flattening 50 million euros of NATO funding." "We're not crushing anything," I said, unable to keep that electric excitement out of my voice. I was shaking. "We just compress a dimension. According to our calculations, the other 7 cubes will compress into the exact same coordinates as the first one, without intersecting. They will overlap quantum mechanically." "It's topology," Dahlia intervened. Her voice was the perfect counter to mine, calm and precise. The GFA generates a localized gravity well, so intense it will bend spatial dimensions inwards. It will project the building into a higher dimensional space and leave only a 3D cross-section behind. Hansen took a sip from his thermos, shifting his gaze up to my beautiful building. So like a pocket dimension, you're telling me you can fit an entire base inside a closet? Yes, kind of, I said, clapping once and pointing a finger at him. Imagine infinite space on a finite plot of land. It will revolutionize urban planning, architecture, and... Storage, Hansen interrupted me. Deployment. A bunker that can't be hit by missiles because the interior doesn't exist outside it. Do it then, Doctor. Let's see where our money went. Dahlia and I exchanged looks. A decade had passed. A decade of failed grants and scientific mockery. Of sleepless nights and broken prototypes, all conveyed between us in a single glance. She nodded and tapped a sequence on her tablet. We all put our earmuffs on. Our hands joined together on the safety switch mounted on the side of the console. Then we turned the key and pressed the interface. The earth shook when the GFA screamed like a giant beast. Its engines rumbled as massive amounts of power were released into the pillars, more than what could power an entire city. The air pressure dropped quickly and made our ears ring. A frequency followed that hit my chest and made my bones rattle and my teeth ache. The reaction assaulted our biology rather than our eyes. There was no flash of light or laser beams. It all happened just like in our simulation. The space between the pillars boiled, and the air turned into a violent but warm storm that melted the snow around them. I couldn't take my eyes off the building. Lights bent all around it, following geometric arcs that were impossible to predict. Gravitational lensing, that was the name. Like the light of a star passing behind a black hole. Even space itself warped, behaving like air above a jet plane. Gravity was pulling it inwards. All the steel stretched into a translucent distortion, slowly bleeding into the cube beneath. I tasted blood in my mouth, but I ignored it. We knew it would happen. Completely mesmerized, I watched the solid matter fold onto itself. The 4 cubes flanking the 3rd floor collapsed inwards through the center, drawn by the crushing gravity. The architecture was literally recalculating itself. Folding angles that our brain could never process. And behind the building, the sky appeared to fracture into thousands of shapes, turning the visual into an ever-shifting mosaic of static. Geometry was melting, liquefying and sliding through the metal. We stared at the matter collapsing towards the central point, but at the same time, remaining in the same place. The absurdity of the view made my stomach turn. I gagged, but forced my eyes to stay open. The scream reached its peak with a vibration that almost shattered the glass. With a shockwave of air that slammed dirt and leaves across it, the noise vanished. A perfect silence fell onto the entire mountain. When the ringing in my ears faded, I wiped the cold sweat from my forehead, and just then I noticed my nose was bleeding. Dahlia also had a thin line of blood on her lips, and so did Hansen and his soldiers. They moaned, holding their temples. I raised my gaze and looked past the cracked glass. The mist had disappeared, and not just that. "My God," I whispered. My towering cross of 8 cubes was gone. In the center of the concrete platform and the ring of black pillars sat a single cube, just the ground floor. Hansen stepped forward, with a face of shock that spoke for itself. "What happened?" he yelled. "Where's the rest of it? Did it disintegrate? You told me you were going to compress it, Doctor. Did you just destroy years of work?" I ignored him and stared, my palms and face pressing against the glass. "Dahlia, the telemetry, it's stable," she said, out of breath. Her fingers tapped across the tablet. "It's there. The mass readings on the platform haven't changed at all. It's still supporting the same weight as before. The spatial overlapping is holding. The W-axis compression is at 100%. She smiled at me, and so did I. The hypervolume folded successfully. "It worked," I said, trying to catch my breath. "It's all inside." Dahlia slammed into me. My legs were giving out, but my hands, still shaking, wrapped around her coat and held her tight. I buried my face into her shoulder with tears wetting the fabric. We hugged, ignoring the soldiers and the freezing wind returning. Like two people who'd spent the last 10 years digging a tunnel out of a prison and finally found freedom. "Where did the other floors go?" the general asked. "It's all there," I said. "We just can't see the other 7 rooms because our eyes are locked into 3 dimensions. We're just looking at a single face of it." "Radiation levels are negligible," Dahlia reported, her eyes darting between her tablet and the single cube. "Gravity is normalized. Atmosphere is standard." We walked across the dirt towards the perimeter of the platform. Hansen followed us, flanked by his soldiers. Their faces paled in confusion. From that angle, the cube looked completely normal. Just a gray box of brutalist architecture with a door on the front and windows on the sides. "So," the general said with a gesture towards the cube, "can we walk inside?" "Not yet," I answered. I was about to continue when I took a few steps to the right to get a better angle of the structure, and the magic happened. As my perspective shifted, the cube reacted. It moved. The front face containing the door contracted inwards and flattened into a sheet of light. At the same time, the left wall unfolded outwards to replace it. The door became a ghostly image that lingered for a second before bleeding and vanishing. It slid back into the center and became translucent, while a blank panel folded out from the opposite side. I stopped dead and watched in awe. "Mein Gott," the general said. "What the hell is that?" one of the soldiers yelled, aiming his rifle at the cube. "Do not shoot!" we both screamed. Hansen drew his own rifle, taking a step back. "Dr. Johann, the building is moving. You said it was stable. Why is it tracking us?" I could hear both Dahlia's heart and mine hammering in the silence. I sidestepped to the right and the cube reacted instantly. The wall retracted into an impossible center and the face with the door came back, pulled from the interior to face me again. Its motions were so fluid and sickening to watch. "It's not moving, and it's not tracking us," I said, taking ragged breaths. The knowledge hit me with massive force. "Nothing is alive, General. It's just the projection." "Speak English, Doctor," Hansen said, without lowering his weapon. "He's right." Dahlia stepped in front of him. "Think of a normal 3D cube. If you look straight at it, you only see one face, a square. But if you walk around it, you see the other faces. What we're looking at is no longer a cube. This is a tesseract, a 4D hypercube. It possesses 8 cubical faces. But because it's now existing in a 3D space, it has to rotate its hypervolume to maintain continuity in our field of vision. It's not moving. Our movements are forcing its projection to recalculate. We can only perceive one cross-section at a time. "Send the drone in," Hansen ordered. "Nobody is stepping inside a building that can't decide what shape it is." A soldier carried a large drone. He set it on the concrete and stepped back. The front door of the cube could be opened via remote control. Dahlia tapped on her tablet and, with an echoing screech, the door swung open. Inside, the lights were on. The interior looked just like before. Sterile walls and a table bolted to the floor. In the corner, the staircase leading to the second floor. The drone rolled on the concrete and crossed the threshold of the cube. We all gathered around the monitor of the soldier handling it. The camera feed showed a perfectly normal view. The lighting was fine. The table showed no visible changes. "Upstairs," I said, as we all stared in silence. "Make it proceed upstairs." The soldier nodded. The drone rolled towards the staircase and raised its mechanical legs to begin a slow climb. None of us dared make a sound. We stopped breathing as the images appeared on the monitor. The drone reached the top of the stairs and rolled onto the second floor. "I don't understand," Hansen said. He pointed a finger at the screen. "The drone is going up, but there's no second floor there. Where is it going?" "Because it worked. The internal volume is maintained. The second floor exists within the folded dimension," Dahlia replied. He didn't answer. The drone reached the second floor, transmitting footage of the room and its pristine walls and window. Hansen was no longer looking at the monitor. I followed his gaze. So did Dahlia, her face paling. Hovering over the cube, directly above the center, was the drone. Instead of flying, it stood there, existing in a space that our eyes couldn't understand. Its shape stretched and twisted to infinity like a graphic glitch. It folded open, showing the internal wiring and circuits, all the gears and treads, the camera lens, everything occupying the same visual plane. We were looking at an autopsy of a robot floating above the cube, but the monitor still showed the images from the inside without issues. As it moved, the metal skeleton kept distorting into long spikes and snapping back into a cluster made of all its components. Inside the building, it was still navigating the second floor, intact. "It's moving through the W-axis," I whispered. "It's not broken. We're just seeing the light escaping the folding. That's its cross-section passing through our dimension. That's fascinating." The view was horrifying, but it was also the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. We'd done it. "General, prepare the suits," I said. "We're going in." 2 of the last 10 years went into designing those, just for this moment. Thick shells over a flexible membrane with an exterior of layered polymer that caught the sunlight. The helmets sealed at the neck with a pressurized collar. The 4 security locks clicked one at a time. We looked like something between deep-sea divers and astronauts. "Dr. Johann, you want me to put this on while my men are securing the perimeter in winter clothes?" Hansen said, pulling at the gloves of his suit. "This feels a bit excessive." "If you prefer to walk in without one," Dahlia intervened. "Be our guest, General." "You said the building is stable." "Indeed it is," I said, working the zipper on my torso. "But we're not. Our bodies are still 3D. That stops being trivial when we cross that." I pointed towards the cube. The GFA compressed the volume across a W-axis that we don't possess a sensory organ for. If we walk in there without protection, every cell in our bodies will be trying to occupy the same coordinates as themselves. Our organs would unfold outside of them. The general didn't answer. Dahlia finished the explanation. "The suits enforce boundary conditions. They keep our body's location consistent. In short, they will tell the universe that we are still 3-dimensional, in a very angry way." Hansen grunted, looking unhappy with the explanation, but he put on the helmet. The suits were wired, 4 cameras each, 1 in each direction, and microphones. The soldiers outside would have a live feed, or so we thought. Dahlia had done the math on what happened to electromagnetic signals when they crossed a dimensional edge, but we chose not to share that with the general yet. He grabbed his rifle and led the way. We crossed the platform. 3 people who had run out of things to say. The cube sat there in the center of the ring of pillars, like something people would worship, a puzzle waiting to be solved, or a warning begging to be heard. The mist had cleared, leaving behind a sky too blue and clear, like the world itself wanted to observe. Hansen walked in first, raising the rifle to shoulder height. To greet us was the most normal banality, just as all the times we'd gone in before. The walls, the table. On the opposite side, a window showed the mountains and the line of pines. The sunlight came from the distance and formed a yellow glowing square on the floor. Nothing told us we were navigating a hypervolume. "Smells like a construction site," Hansen said. Dahlia's helmet shook slowly. "No, it doesn't. We can't perceive smells through the suit. It's a phantom sensation." She checked the reading on her tablet. "Atmosphere is standard. Oxygen at 21%. Gravity is 9.81. She glanced towards the window. "Visual from outside is undistorted." "Of course," I said. "We're still in the 3D section." The drone sat at the top of the staircase where it had stopped, intact. Its light blinked, green and steady. Might have sounded silly, but I felt affection for it. It went in first and came back fine, the first human-made object to step in a 4D space. A hero robot. Humanity would remember it like the first man on the moon. I smiled. The staircase ended in a square hole in the ceiling. The normalcy in our footsteps' noise made cold sweat run behind my neck. Hansen swept the barrel of his rifle across the room as he approached the staircase. Keep a tight formation. General, there are no living entities in this structure, Dahlia said, following. Furthermore, your weapon is about to experience some unfolding. I suggest you leave it downstairs. Hansen ignored her, his helmet pointed up, eyes locked on the top as he climbed the first step. We followed close behind, boots echoing in the narrow space. Each step felt too ordinary, and for that reason my teeth couldn't stop chattering. We moved at a snail's pace. It took a lifetime to reach the top. When we stepped onto the second floor, none of us moved or said anything. Hansen stood with both hands at his sides and his rifle down. I watched him trying to understand that there was, indeed, a second floor. That it existed, had walls and a floor and lights and windows. And that his rifle was no longer a rifle. It had unfolded just as Dahlia and I predicted, just like our bodies would have done without the suits, in the same way a book opens, but on its own. The barrel extended, flattened, and at the same time curved into itself. The body peeled along an axis that our brains couldn't comprehend. Everything spread outwards into an arrangement of components that were still connected, but pointed everywhere and nowhere. Like a schematic, Hansen dropped it and stepped back. It became a smear of its own components and settled into a tangle of metal and plastic. The thud bounced off interconnecting walls. Hansen yelled, "What the hell is that? You said it would break." "We said it would unfold," Dahlia clarified. "That's the accurate term." "There's no reason it should do that." "Oh, there's every reason for it to do that," I said. The conversation died when we raised our gazes. The room had done the same thing the rifle did, but in a larger way. Facing me was the north wall, or what I thought was the north wall. It occupied the same space in which the floor should have been, and both surfaces were visible, below us. No, not below, through us. The first floor was visible without a gap, but through what I called an overlap. The window was on the east wall, but also on the south wall. It showed the outside, a band of compressed images along the edge of my vision. Trees and concrete stretched and compressed like crumpled balls of paper. The nausea came back stronger when I looked around. I was about to throw up. The walls were transparent. I was viewing the first floor from an angle that shouldn't exist. Our little hero, the drone, sat there, all its internal body stretched into a glitch, its anatomy looping endlessly. "If we had walked in without these suits," Hansen muttered. "Instantaneous death," Dahlia answered. "Our topology would have attempted to recalculate to fit the 4D space," I added. "All our organs and skin and bones and veins. They would—" "That's enough, Dr. Johann, I got it." Hansen walked towards the window with careful steps over a floor that intersected with the world below. He tried to communicate with his soldiers, but was met only with static noise. "We expected that," I said. "Radio waves in a 4D space propagate in a hypersphere rather than a sphere. In a folded environment, the propagation path doesn't end where the receiver is. The signal has nowhere to arrive. Think of it like trying to deliver a package to an address that exists on every road on the planet. So we're isolated." "We've always been," Dahlia said, with no worry in her voice. "We just couldn't prove it until now." The light shifted. The entire room darkened. I caught something at the edge of the window. Darkness, like a shadow moving. It crossed the mountains and the structure, and it was gone in a second. Could it have been a cloud? It made sense. The sunlight traveled inside the building after all. "Did you see that?" Hansen asked. "A gravitational glitch, probably," I answered. "With the GFA bending the space, visual artifacts are to be expected." We climbed to the third floor. It required concentration. The distortion made the distance between the steps impossible to understand. When we reached the top, my obsession peaked. The only way to describe that floor was a theorem. As we came up, suddenly there were 5 rooms, and none of them had a door or even a wall between them and us. The corridor, walls, bathroom, the bedrooms, and the studio we'd built around the middle room, all were accessible at the same time. Their interiors folded open, The porcelain of the bathtub intersected with the mattress of the bedroom. Studio desks floated inside closets. "This is unreal," Hansen commented, spinning once. "It's real," Dahlia whispered, "and spectacular." "To a three-dimensional observer watching from outside, we must be teleporting," I said. "If we walk to the studio, we just appear there." Dahlia crouched beside the bathroom wall, which was also every other room's wall and also the floor. I watched as her hand reached into the bedroom, moving through nothing where the walls unfolded. She lifted a pen from the desk and it came back to her hand, unfolding itself like everything else. Did you just grab that through the wall?" Hansen said. "Object retrieval across boundaries with no physical transit," she said, holding the twisting thing up. "Technically, there is no wall," I said. "The 5 rooms share a 3D space, so their surface distributed into the available geometry. Imagine a house drawn on paper, all flat. A 2D person living inside the drawing must move through its doors because the walls are impassable. But for you, looking down at the page, everything can be reached without touching a single door. The walls can't stop you because you are approaching from an axis that doesn't exist for the 2D person. That's us right now. We are standing above the page." "I should stop asking questions," Hansen said. "There was a table in the studio, which we'd put as a simulated habitation test, and from the higher dimension, I could see the top and the bottom at the same time. I could see inside the drawers." Dahlia ran her measurements again. Atmosphere still standard and gravity at 9.6. Interesting. A small deviation, but not alarming. Radiation increased slightly, but still way below dangerous levels. As the general inspected the floor, attempting to pick up objects through walls, we collected data, talking and comparing numbers, and so we heard it. First came a vibration, a frequency that our microphones caught before our ears did. It rose into a moan, deep and uneven, something that didn't fit any scale we could identify. The closest thing I could compare it to was a whale's lament, but it came from above. At the same moment, the light dropped again. This time, all the rooms darkened for several seconds, as if something was passing between the sun and us. "Can visual artifacts make noise, Dr. Johann?" Hansen said. "We don't know," Dahlia answered, and I knew her too well to see how much those words hurt her to say. "The readings are normal. Nothing spiked during that. No pressure change. No radiation anomaly. Nothing." "It might be dimensional resonance," I said. "In a folded space, the geometry is touching the adjacent regions. Sound might behave differently. Instead of propagating through a medium, it goes through the shape of space itself. And the shape of space here is..." I gestured, unsure of what to say. "I don't know. Maybe an acoustic artifact from the fold itself." "From the fold?" Hansen echoed. "Like an echo. From the shape of the room instead of the room." The staircase to the last floor felt steeper, harder to climb. We didn't need the readings to notice the air was different, heavier, holding a certain resistance, the same way air feels before a huge storm, when the pressure drops and the body knows before the eyes see it. Our suits registered the change. "Gravity is at 8.8. We've lost over 10%. Dahlia held her tablet up. "Radiation went up 40%, still within safe levels, but it spiked. Pressure is down 8%. She turned to face me. "Johann, this wasn't in our simulations." "Is that a problem?" Hansen asked. I wanted to tell him no, that everything was fine. "It means the fold here is affecting more than the physical geometry. There might be let's call it a battle between the compression and the gravitational field we hadn't accounted for." "Will the suits hold?" "They will. They can hold more than this," Dahlia confirmed. We stepped towards the windows of the 4th floor, and outside the world had broken. It had set a huge fuck you to perspective. It took me a minute to understand what I was looking at. The soldiers down there, all of them, I could see every single one, were visible in their entirety. No, not through clothes or skin. Through everything. their full architecture flattened in the same space as their bodies. Muscles stretched over bones, opened like a blueprint. Their lungs pulsed with each breath, and the blood traveled through arteries across the whole body. They walked around and talked to each other, unaware we were looking at them from a dimension they couldn't see. To another person, it must have been horrifying. To me, it was the most intimate thing I'd ever seen. "My men!" Hansen yelled when he looked out. "They're fine, General," I said. From their position, nothing changed. We're just looking at them from above the page. Remember? They only look like that from up here. Hansen stepped back and didn't look again. Dahlia took her measurements as I photographed every overlapped surface. We checked every reading and talked to each other at a speed that made it sound like a foreign language to anyone who hadn't spent a decade on this project. I laughed when she made a joke, a good one that nobody else but the two of us could get. The last staircase loomed in front of us, ending in a metal door. The roof access, in the exact position where we'd built it, and that never sparked any particular interest in me, until that moment. The air was becoming too dense, and the gravity was playing unfunny jokes, but I wanted to do it. I had to. Observe the world in a full tetradimensional space. I had to see what was on the other side. "We have sufficient data," Dahlia said. "We should head back." Her face, through her helmet, was something I couldn't read, for the first time since we'd met in middle school. We were both doing the calculation, but not the same one. "We didn't come this far only to go back one step from the finish line," I said. "We came this far to collect data, Johan, and we have enough. We've proved the hypervolume exists. This space is too volatile." "But there's more above us." "That's the problem. There could be too much above us." Hansen stepped between us, facing me. "I'll say this. Whatever made that sound earlier came from up there." He pointed at the roof door. "And my opinion about sounds I can't identify is to not walk towards them." "It was an artifact. We're literally bending space-time. Oddities are to be expected." "You said you didn't know what it was, Dr. Johan." "I just don't know what category it belongs to. We've spent 10 years building this door, and I'm not refusing to open it now that it stands in front of me," I said too loudly, stepping past both of them and climbing the distorted steps 3 at a time. "This is the paradigm shift. I am documenting the roof." They rushed, trying to stop me, but I grabbed the handle and pushed the door open. I stepped out, and the sky stepped in. Literally. I stood on the roof of a hypercube, right at the top of the dimensional boundary. The sky had become an intersection of all possible skies, with every point visible as a volume instead of a surface, coming from all directions at once. Its layers curved and looped around each other through cloud formations, existing in their full 3D shape instead of a flat ceiling. The atmosphere became an ocean of fractals with impossible geometry and colors that I'd never seen. And I could see time. Echoes of snow falling upwards, crossing the light of billions of different galaxies overlapping into a singularity. "This is beautiful," Dahlia gasped behind me, mesmerized. Hansen said nothing. We all looked up in awe. We spread across the roof and walked around. The data kept coming in faster than we could process it. Electromagnetic fields, pressure, gravitational waves, and atmosphere at an altitude we were and were not. And in all that, I couldn't stop talking. I must have said the words Nobel Prize 10 times. We were going to rewrite all the basic principles of physics. No, of all science. We stood where nobody had ever stood before in the history of the universe, in the hypervolume of a folded dimension, and we looked at it from above the page. The building vibrated before our suits registered it, and the light changed again. This time we could see it clearly. The entire sky darkened from every direction at once, and we all knew this wasn't how darkness worked. This wasn't how anything worked. The sound came again, longer and louder. It came from inside the vibration, from above. We looked up, just as it arrived. I had no idea what I was looking at. My brain tried its best to find logic in it, but the numbers were all wrong. The world was wrong. A surface, or better, a membrane, except it was neither. As we watched, it shifted. One moment there was a sheet of glistening material that moved with the typical irregularity of a living being. The next moment, it folded out into a shape my eyes couldn't process. Not just because of its instability. That valley of pulsing red mountains slid with calcified columns like the supports of a cathedral made of flesh and bone. It materialized out of nothing, spanning miles and miles, and faded into waterfalls of black fluid. The tissue sliced into the three-dimensional space, constantly warping and folding. On Dahlia's tablet, the gravitational readings did something we'd never expected. It dropped, faster and faster. 3, 2, 1. Then it reached 0. What happened next was wrong. It went against every law of physics. It dropped below 0. That minus sign before the number mocked our pathetic human brains. It had to be wrong. The device had to be broken. Negative gravity? What nonsense was that? Our feet left the roof. I had no time to be surprised, but enough to anchor myself to the roof door. The gravitational pull was no longer downward. My vision twisted and slowly rotated until the sky was below me like an endless ocean, and the roof was now a ceiling. Hansen floated in the air. Both his hands grabbed my ankle. Below him, dangling over the 4D ocean, Dahlia clung to Hansen's belt, her boots kicking the empty space. "Johann!" she cried out. "Hansen, don't let go!" I shouted. As the pull intensified, the most horrifying hypothesis came to my mind. Whatever that thing passing through the three-dimensional space was, it must have been so massive that it possessed its own gravitational field. That's when I realized. What we saw was only the 3D projection of something much, much larger. Just like a cube appeared as a square on a 2D surface, showing a fraction of its real size. How massive was that thing? I had no idea how to describe it. The shape in the sky below us kept changing and moving. The darkness had become absolute, like floating in open space. It covered everything. "Pull!" Hansen said. "I am pulling." But neither of us moved because there was nothing to move towards. The door was the only fixed point remaining. The entire building was shaking. The thing below us was still there, moving, passing, arriving and departing in every direction at once. Hansen's hands slipped from my ankle, and I managed to twist and grab him with one hand just in time. But the grip was weak. "The suits are failing!" Dahlia shouted. The exoskeletons groaned and bent under the immense gravity. "I'm slipping," Hansen said. I clenched my jaw so hard, tasting blood. The pull of that thing was astronomical, but this was no attack. Whatever it was, it didn't even acknowledge us. We were just ants, caught in the gravitational destruction of a passing god. 3 fingers, then 2. Hansen's hand slipped. I watched as they fell. The edges of their suits first flickered, in the same way the drone had done from outside. Their bodies appeared to me in cross-section, and then in a section I had no name for. They stretched along the W-axis. "Dahlia!" I screamed. They fell into the sky, plummeting towards the endless expanse of red and white. The 3D barriers of their bodies ceased to exist. They elongated into a loop of infinite ribbons, made of cross-sections of their internal structures. Their limbs stretched for hundreds of feet down the void, like falling into a black hole. Among the unfolding structures, flattening and adding more colors to the sky, I saw their eyes, massive and distorted, staring up at me, and filled with such an agony that it broke my very soul. Their screams came through the comms, and after a second, they turned into a loud electric static. When the light returned, my vision rotated again. Gravity slammed me on the roof floor and left me lying on the concrete with the 4D sky back above me. My shoulder broke with a sickening crack. I screamed. Not from pain. I screamed until my throat burned and I choked. I dragged myself towards the stairs and rolled down. I stumbled blindly through the lower floor, crying. On the second floor, Hansen's rifle was still on the floor, unfolded. The drone continued its mapping. On the first floor, the world returned three-dimensional. A soldier caught me when I stepped outside. I burst through the front door and ripped the helmet off my head. Then I vomited bile and blood onto the concrete. I woke up to a hospital ceiling, Radiation, they told me. I'd been exposed to massive amounts that the suit failed to protect me from. They'd never stopped questioning me about what happened, but I hadn't managed to speak a single word. The doctors looked afraid of telling me the truth. Weeks, or a few days, most likely. That's how long I have left. I'm in a bed with a window that faces the city and the sky above it. An ordinary sky. A blue two-dimensional surface. I'm tired and my hands are cold. 10 years we'd spent building a door to somewhere nobody could have ever reached. We proved it was there, that we could go in and come back, or that at least I could, once, and then pay the price from beyond the grave. I know Dahlia's not dead. I want to clarify this. Her suit didn't break last time I saw her. In higher dimensions, time is just another direction one can move. She must be stretching across eternity in a moment of biological unfolding that never ends. But she's up there, and I'm going to meet her soon. Who knows? Maybe all of us are going to, very soon. Because just a moment ago, a sound echoed through the glass, coming from the sky, deep and steady like a whale's lament. Just when the light shifted and the room darkened for a second. That shift when something passes between you and the light. It swam across the sky. I saw it, eclipsing the entire planet, a colossal section of glistening muscle and bone, its shape changing and moving in every direction at once, bleeding from its higher dimension into ours. I'm sorry, I brought it here. I don't know when it's going to tear the sky open, but I know that the sirens won't even have time to start. I just hope I'll be gone before that.